Thank you again so much for inviting me to talk about what we're working on and to have this discussion about where do we grow from here. And like Carson said, I'm Liisa Itkonen. I'm a principal planner with Compass and also the planning team lead. And I will be giving a brief introduction to what Compass is and what it does, and then really focus on that regional long range plan and what the significance of that is. I'll talk about the surveys that we've done, the results from those, and then really start to get into that, where do we grow from here, and talk a little bit about the next steps. So as the long name says, Compass is the Community Planning Association of Southwest Idaho, and it is the forum for regional collaboration with the goal of offering people choices in how and where they live, work, play, and travel. And Compass is an association, as the name says, of local governments, and it also functions as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Ada and Canyon counties. The Compass members include the two counties, all the cities in the two counties, Ada County Highway District, and two of the four highway districts in Canyon County, as well as some others, Idaho Transportation Department, um, uh, Department of Environmental Quality, Boise State University, and some others. And we are governed by a board of directors, which is made of mainly typically the elected officials from the member agencies. So every one of us is represented on the Compass board by at least one member. Just think about it, there's counties, cities, highway districts, and so on. So you have representation on the Compass board, and that board provides that policy direction on the long range plan, as well as any funding decisions that come from there. So it's a really important sort of the decision maker, really, in the two counties. And that's why it's so important that we get engagement from not just our member agencies, but also the public, so that those board members will get that feedback and input from everybody. So as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, Compass has these four regional roles. We plan, and I'll talk more about that. And then we implement, which means that we really, this gets to the funding side of things. So one of the Compass roles is to secure resources to advance those regional goals and really try to get projects implemented. So we provide some grant assistance. We have some community motion grants and other kinds of things. We also are the technical expert in the region, and really the regional source for data, especially on GIS, demographics, transportation modeling, and those kinds of things. We do have a lot of data, and we have sort of an open data source available online. And especially if you have any questions or you're looking for some kind of regional data, Compass might be a good place to start and ask us first. And then we facilitate. And this is really the role to bring the stakeholders and the public together. So not just by providing that forum for the member agencies to talk about issues in the two counties, but also then bring in the public and other stakeholders to provide that input into that decision-making process. And I will focus on this planning role. And the key part of this, really, especially from my point of view, is this long-range transportation plan. And it is a plan that needs to look out at least 20 years into the future. We update it every 4 years, so it is a fairly ongoing process. And it is a plan for a transportation system that meets the needs of the future growth. So the growth that we're forecasting by that horizon year, we're planning to have a transportation system that's ready for that. That's the main thing about this plan. And really, it needs to be a system that includes not just roadways, which we've been focusing pretty heavily in the past, but also transit, so public transportation, active transportation, so walking and biking, as well as freight. So how do we move goods around in the region? And that's one of the things that has kind of become more in the forefront the last several years. So we then obviously need to know how much money do we expect to have by that horizon year. Really, what can we pay for? What kinds of projects can we actually implement? And so we do a financial forecast also as part of this planning process, because this plan is what is federally called fiscally constrained. So it cannot be just a wish list of things. This is what we want to have by 2050 or whenever. But we can only show as funded in the plan those projects that we can actually demonstrate that we have funding for, which means that we typically have then a whole lot of other needs that are unfunded. And that's where the finding grants and things comes into play. And throughout this, it's really important that we have this engagement and involvement, not with the public, but also member agencies and others. And an interesting thing then at the end of this type of planning process, we also need to then conduct this air quality conformity demonstration for projects in northern Ada County, because we still are a maintenance area for air quality. And the purpose of this demonstration is to ensure that the planned roadway projects won't cause us to exceed the allowed vehicle emissions. So that's and that's actually the only part that the Federal Highway Administration will approve in the plan. They'll review the rest of it, but that's the one that they need to approve. And so the current plan is called Community Motion 2040 2.0, and as the name says, it is an update to Community Motion 2040. So the horizon year is the same of 2040, and we are, as I said, we are currently working on an update to this. This current plan is available online, and you can find it from the Compass website, compassidaho.org. So we are working on the update, and this is the process, or the graph kind of illustrating what the process generally is. So there's these three phases: explore, choose, prioritize, and they kind of follow fiscal years. The end goal is there in December of 2022, when this new plan is due for the Compass Board for their adoption. And we are here now. So we've completed the first two surveys, and I'll talk more about that. And the significance of the surveys and really the whole process, and kind of the point of this discussion about where do we grow from now, is this this vision. It's at the root of this plan, and everything else is then based on that. So at the beginning of the plan update, we start with establishing that demographic forecast. So we did that late last year, and the Compass Board approved that in December of 2019 at 1,075,000 people by 2050 in the two counties. So that's the forecast. That's what we're planning for. And then the next step is to develop that vision for what that growth should look like. And so to develop that Community Motion 2050 vision, we started with the Community Motion 2040 vision, which you see here in the background. And we then used what we heard from the first survey, A Lot Can Change in 30 Years, which was last fall, and then coupled with that population forecast of nearly 1.1 million people by 2050. And we developed 4 different kind of what-if scenarios for what Treasure Valley could look like in 2050. And those, so we used the results from that first survey. So that's what you see here. And The survey was conducted last fall, and we got over 3,700 participants in that. And generally, the themes that came through, what people want was a house on a larger lot. um, they also supported and wanted more farming methods that grow more food on less land, probably kind of making the connection that if you keep having houses on larger lots, you're not going to have a lot of farmland. Um, Also, there was support for alternative work arrangements, spending leisure time in nature, um, shopping both in store but also online. So there was kind of the two different things on that. And then people really wanted to drive alone. That was by far the most popular means of getting around, is driving alone, but also rail got a lot of support. And that was the question, sort of, if these different things are available, where to be available, would you use them? And rail really was, next to driving alone, the most popular one. And obviously, so this was done before COVID hit, and some of these things may look a lot different if we ask the same questions now. People have a lot more experience on alternative work arrangements and shopping online and those kinds of things. So um, the other things that people were concerned about were really the cost of housing. So people were generally concerned and worried about growth, but especially in terms of what it has done to our housing prices. And people were hesitant about embracing new transportation technologies. We specifically asked about some of those, such as autonomous vehicles. And this is really following the national trend and what national surveys are finding also. People are not really all that keen on embracing that kind of technology yet. So the color coding here just tells you how we use these different this feedback that we got and how those got into these 4 different scenarios. So we got Let It Be, Ticket to Ride, Penny Lane, and Come Together. I don't know if this rings a bell for anybody. Beatles has a great catalog for, picking out some titles. Um, so we took what we learned from these and ended up with those 4 what if scenarios. And then these went to the second survey, Where Do We Grow From Here, that we did last summer. I'll briefly go over what was in those scenarios and then talk about the results. So the first one, Let It Be, really is the trend scenario. So if we continue to grow the way that we've been growing, this is what we would get. Mostly suburban development, and with some urban housing near downtowns and employment centers. The transportation the funding would be focused on maintenance, and with just a few key corridors that would get widened to address the growth and congestion. Well, the one thing that you see in all of these is that orange line there on State Street, and that represents, so this one here, that represents a bus rapid transit on State Street. So that would be a kind of a enhanced bus service with increased capacity, some, at least in parts of the State Street, a dedicated lane, and kind of priority treatment with signals and those kinds of things. So you will see this in all of these scenarios, but other than that, each of them has a kind of a transportation theme, as well as a different type of land use that goes with it. Then Ticket to Ride is the rail scenario. This is the only one that actually identifies a high capacity rail between Caldwell and Boise, and that's the pink line there. So the housing would be kind of a mix, including apartments near transit, including along that rail, as well as some single family homes. And then these rail stops would be located near new urban activity centers, really, again, to help preserve farmland. And we would need a new local funding source to be able to actually develop something like this for the rail. And then Penny Lane is the, I call it the stingiest version of all of these. It really addresses that housing affordability by providing, this would provide less expensive suburban housing, so further out from the centers, and also then small housing on smaller lots and kind of in live work units near employment centers. So what this would do is the would be, commutes would be shorter for some that live closer to the centers, but then much longer for the others. And the transportation improvements, again, because we're short on money, would really be focused on encouraging walking and biking near town centers. And there, yes, you can see from the map, there's not much that would be done with the overall roadway system. And then finally, come together. This includes a variety of housing choices and really focusing on areas where services are already there. So where we already have infrastructure, we already have services, let's focus the growth in these areas to really try to minimize the impact, the impact on local governments, essentially having to pay for additional expansion of infrastructure and other kinds of things. And so this type of development would also preserve the farmland. And in this, for this type of thing to work, then the transportation funding would be really focused on enhancing a bus system, as well as the active transportation modes to get people to and from the transit, and then have the buses serve most of the valley. So those were the four that were in that second survey. And we got over 3,100 participants in this one. And as you can see from these surveys or these results, there were two scenarios that were clearly the best liked ones. So Ticket to Ride and Come Together. And this is translating the 1 to 5 scoring into a Likert scale. So agree, strongly agree. And it just so happens that the percentages ended up exactly the same. So the top two and were Ticket to Ride and Come Together, and then Penny Lane and Let It Be did not fare that well. So the second survey also asked people to rank these 8 values to their top 5. And these 8 were identified as important to the Treasure Valley from the last 8 years of community motion outreach, the Boise State survey, as well as then our work groups and focus groups of stakeholders. And these were clearly the top 5. So growth management, affordability, environmental health, outdoors lifestyle, and economic vitality. So these, then in working with our regional transportation advisory committee and the Compass Board of Directors, we've translated these values into a goal statement that you see here. Through providing transportation options and an effective transportation system, Community Motion 2050 will support growth management, affordability, economic vitality, outdoor lifestyle, environmental health, and choices in where people live. And the key aspects that you'll see in this vision for Community Motion 2050 and where do we grow from here, I'll go over those bullet points here. So growth management, really, again, this is getting to the idea that we want to identify locations and types of growth that would help us grow in areas and take advantage of the existing infrastructure and services, and help us not overburden public budgets. we worked with a consultant to develop a fiscal impact analysis tool that we were able to use to quantify the cost of those different what-if scenarios. And we're now working on a second phase of that to actually be able to quantify the cost of comprehensive plans and different things in there. And then affordability. We are looking at affordability by combining housing and transportation cost. So again, the idea that you can find a cheaper house further out, but then your transportation cost will probably be more, and the net may not be any better than if you ended up living closer to, let's say, your employment. Outdoor lifestyle and environmental health means that, again, we're trying to find places to grow that would stay away from farmland, protected areas, other sensitive areas like wildlife habitats and riparian areas and those kinds of things. However, one thing to keep in mind is that as we're doing this and kind of working to allocate that growth throughout the region, if there are entitlements, those will be included. So anything that has already been entitled will show up here as, it's going to get built. And relating to that is this build out calculation so that we can check this vision and the growth allocation when it's done against the local plans to make sure that they're all synchronized, so that the vision will have same types of land use and intensities as what's in the comprehensive plans. So local governments have developed those. The difference is that comprehensive plans don't have any kind of horizon year. So when we quantified everybody's current comprehensive plans, if and when those plans would be when they come to fruition, we would have over 2 million people in the region. So essentially, local governments are planning for having over 2 million people here sometime in the future. And that's the kicker there. Our long range plan has that horizon year of 20 plus years. And so, but still, we need to be kind of in sync with the local planning. And one more thing, since community motion is about the growth and the transportation system that meets the future needs, and in the first two surveys, people really indicated that they supported some kind of high capacity system, rail. People really like the idea of light rail, and that's the one that keeps coming up. And generally wanted more and better transit. We will conduct another survey early next year, asking specifically about transit needs and preferences. And so we will have this third survey coming up in January on high capacity transit. And it will ask about preferred features and, again, values, what people want, trip types, and also then willingness to shift their transportation mode. People really like their cars and want to drive alone. So we want to make sure that they really mean that, when they say they want rail, that they would actually use it. It was interesting in that survey, or the first survey, people in the open-ended comments, people were saying, yeah, we really want rail, need to use rail. But these were people living in Boise that most likely were thinking, we want all those other people to use rail, so we don't have the congestion. And it's pretty typical. I mean, that's the way that we think. We want everybody else to use transit, so roads are less congested for us. But so this is coming up early next year, and I can send then more information on this. So if all goes well, we will launch this in mid-January. And then the input from this survey will be incorporated into that vision, because depending on what type of high capacity system we might end up with, it will have an impact on the kinds of land uses that we would have around it and with it. One thing to also that I need to point out is that as we talk about rail, it would need to go with a very robust bus system, because a rail on its own is not going to work. It won't do anything. But rail or some other kind of high capacity, meaning that it would have, as the name says, more capacity to move people. So a bigger bus, like an articulated bus or train that is maybe more frequent, especially on those peak periods. It still needs to have the bus system to support it and make sure that people can get to this type of service to and from there, as well as all the other destinations that are still there throughout the region. So I will stop here for any immediate questions before I wrap up, and then maybe we can come back later or at the end then for more questions and the discussion. But if there's anything like super immediate right now.
I have lots of questions, Lisa, but I can wait until.
Okay, we'll get those at the end. So as a wrap up, so what goes into this vision, really, how do we know, where do we grow from here? So we start with that population forecast of almost 1.1 million people by 2050. Then we've had these 2 surveys. We'll have the 3rd survey. All of that input is going into the goals, objectives. We've done the build out calculation, and all of this is then getting into this growth and transportation vision and the strategies. We'll be working on this next spring. So we've done the build out, we've established goals. We're doing the 3rd survey next winter, and then into the spring, we will be working on that vision and then start identifying the future transportation needs, priorities, do the funding forecast, figuring out what we can actually afford to do, and then have the draft plan ready in 2022 and ready for public comment and input on that at that time. So with that, now I can answer questions.
Thank you, Lisa. That was great. Maybe we can go to the view so we can all see each other a little bit for the question part. Yeah.
There's my contact information. It's going to be on the recording and you can get it from there. So I will stop sharing so you can see everybody.
If you're feeling brave, you can turn your videos on if you feel like it, but no pressure. Yeah, thank you, Lisa. It's so interesting, all this work you're doing, and I've taken both of those surveys, and if you haven't participated in the survey, you totally should. They're actually really fun to take because they're formatted in a really nice visual and sort of fun way. So super interesting. I'll start with one question, and then I'll open it up. And I know we already have one in the chat. I guess my question is thinking about, getting this public comment on what people want. And I know you mentioned, people like driving in their cars, but it's kind of because in some ways that's what we know and we're comfortable with, where it's like you almost need that new thing to see how awesome it is to actually want it. And so like my family's from Seattle, and light rail was put in now a number of years ago, and it's totally transformed these communities and so many people use it now. But I don't think we could have imagined how much benefit it would have provided before we had it. And so I guess I was just curious what your thoughts are on kind of people's perceptions of change when like you maybe know that it's actually going to be good for people, even though they can't necessarily see it yet. So how do you balance that?
That's a really good question. And I see there's sort of a related thing on the chat. So Valley Regional Transit has actually been working on enhancing the State Street route to the, they've increased frequencies and their ridership is going up significantly. So that's an indication that when you provide the service and it meets people's needs, they will use it. And part of the problem is we have sort of this chicken and egg thing here in the Valley, that we don't have the funding to build up the bus system or the transit system to where it really would meet people's needs, and would become a real option. People won't make a change if there's nothing to change into. So that's the issue. But and we're planning now to have kind of this framework in place that we can at least then start to talk to people and our decision makers, lawmakers, about this is what we would do, and here's the system that we could build and how it could serve people throughout the Valley if we had the funding to do it. So it's sort of multi-pronged approach in a way, but yeah, we need to actually, people won't make that change unless there's something real to change into, and that would actually get them to where they need to go when they want to go there.
Yeah.
I have
Brett, do you?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm not exactly sure how to ask it actually, but so for these cross-jurisdictional efforts where you're potentially changing the way neighborhoods or the new neighborhoods might look and people get around, what are some of the, I don't know, I want to frame it in a positive way. How do you get multiple communities that may have different visions or different values to agree? I don't know if that to agree to kind of this comprehensive, like you said, so each municipality has their own comprehensive plan, right? And then you're looking at a kind of a regional plan. So I guess how do you navigate that?
And that's where the Compass board really comes into play. And it's we have a very big board. We have over 30 members representing the 2 counties, the jurisdictions throughout. But when they come together as a Compass board, they really think regionally, and it's really it's been a great process to see. I've been with Compass now for almost 13 years, and also to see the shift in then some of the local jurisdictions kind of start thinking more regionally and kind of how their actions might impact the broader region. And so that's one of the things that makes this whole thing work, is to bring everybody together, have those discussions, both, at the staff level in our Regional Transportation Advisory Committee, and then at the board level with the elected officials. And having that back and forth, then so that when we do then have this plan go in front of the board, we've vetted it with the public and we have the input from everybody, and we can show that to the board, this is what we heard, and then they can make those decisions. But it's again, bringing information to the decision makers on kind of what the impacts of different kinds of decisions might be, what is the long view, and working from there.
Thank you. All right, we have a couple questions coming in on the chat, so I want to make sure we get to those. So let's see, I think you kind of already answered that first one. So from T. Boothman, are plans including outlying areas into Eastern Oregon clear up to McCall?
Not at the moment. So actually one kind of, there's some discussion on some levels of bringing Amtrak back. We used to have the Pioneer Line, I think it was called, that would come from Portland through Caldwell, Nampa into Salt Lake. So there's some interest and discussion now of bringing that back. And so that would connect the region a little bit differently. Right now, we have not included anybody outside the 2 counties. Again, that's a board decision. Per our joint powers agreement, we could work on a 10 county region. And actually the community motion 2030 plan that was done in 2006 did look at 6 counties. So we'll see.
Thank you. All right, let's see. The next one's from Alexa Reutman. Is there a transportation app that the Treasure Valley uses, routes, connections, and expected times for people to access that information?
Yes, there is. If you go to Valley Regional Transit's or Valley Ride website, they have that, and they've it is available now. They keep enhancing that and working on it. So it's there and it's getting better. And definitely use, check it out and provide any feedback that you have on that to Valley Regional Transit so they can keep improving it.
Yeah, I was just kind of questioning that because I feel like how much do you have, not maybe control or input in that area? I feel like it would be really amazing for that to have like more input from the people as well. I don't know. Do you have any affiliation with that?
We work very closely with Valley Regional Transit. They are one of our member agencies, and I really should have mentioned them too.
Yeah, no worries.
And when we are back in the office, we are in the same building. So that physical proximity helps too. But yeah, we do work very closely with them because obviously they are a key partner in all of this. And especially now that we've been working on this high capacity thing and the survey, they've been very much part of it. And again, I really do encourage everybody to kind of stay engaged and provide your feedback, questions, comments that you have. Those are always welcome.
So Liisa, on that, where should people go to submit those kinds of things? Go to your website and find your contact info, or what's the best way to provide feedback?
You can go on the Compass website has, okay, I should have looked this up before to remember exactly where it is. But I think there is a place where you can provide your comments, or you can just go and find a contact and send email to somebody. And we are a fairly small office and we will share.
Great. All right, Stephen Miller, I see your hand is up. You want to go ahead?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I'm a law professor at the U of I here in Boise, and also formerly was a planning and zoning commissioner for the city of Boise for a while. And I was just curious, one of the things in my experience on the commission was that there wasn't a lot of engagement between Compass and the people that actually make most of the land use decisions, which are the P&Z commissioners. And so I'm curious if there's been an effort or a thought about trying to utilize Compass or some of this information about regional growth to get down to the P&Z level or to those people that are kind of on the front lines of engagement. And frankly, I don't even know how much engagement there is with staff. I'm just kind of curious because, I think that Compass and other MPOs have focused a lot over the years on sort of bringing decision makers together, seen broadly as, elected officials, but most of the decisions don't actually make their way to the elected officials. They're made by lower administrative bodies. So anyway, that's kind of a long-winded question, but it just struck me that from my time on the commission that, there was very little discussion on the Boise P&Z, at least when I was there, about regional growth, or how our decisions impacted broader stuff that might happen. So I just thought I'd raise that, and see if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that is one of the challenges. And it seems it's more of a challenge, I think, with the bigger cities in particular, because obviously a lot of our smaller towns, smaller cities, especially in the Canyon County side, rely a lot on campus for different kinds of resources, and so it feels like we work much close with them. We do have that staff connection that should come through that Regional Transportation Advisory Committee. So we have monthly meetings with member agency staff, and it's kind of up to them to communicate within their organizations and to their decision makers, and make sure that communication happens, which sometimes can be a challenge. We specifically for the planning and zoning commissions, when there are development proposals that are certain threshold, Compass does provide a development review checklist, essentially looking at that proposal and going through several things, sort of performance metrics on how well does that meet the goals of communities in motion. So these regional goals or not. And then sometimes providing some suggestions on how to make it fit better. That's a checklist that goes back to Planning and Zoning Commission, and then in some cases to other commissions and boards. But again, it's kind of then up to them how they use it. Do they use it?
Yeah, thank you. All right, I have some other questions while people are percolating. Okay, so I've asked this to all of our speakers, but in your ideal world, in the next 5 years, what would you like to see in your perspective in the Treasure Valley or our community in general?
I would love to see a local option taxing authority, that we could start then working on that, and it would be then up to local jurisdictions to vote on, people vote on, do they want to tax themselves to fund certain projects or not. So that would allow us then to move forward with some of these projects and needs that have been identified. Other than that, it would be great to kind of maybe slow the growth just a little bit to be able to keep track of what's happening. And again, because it's really hard for cities and the counties to deal with all of this when it feels like they are drinking from a fire hose. So not that I would wish for any kind of major recession or anything, but just maybe growing with a little less of a pace.
Yeah, Britt, go ahead.
Can never figure out how to do that little blue hand, so I just raised my. I'm curious. You must have so many ideas and so many potential projects, and I know that you can only put the ones into this update that you have funding for. What happens to the rest of them? Are those things that you pursue funding for in between these plan updates, or?
Yes, and actually the long range plan then includes our unfunded needs as well, and they are prioritized. So in Community Motion 2040, we had a long list of over 30 needs that were prioritized, but that was just one list and kind of a mix of everything, and it was a little bit unwieldy. In Community Motion 2040 2.0, we ended up prioritizing them in 3 different groups. So we had roadway projects on state system, roadway projects on local system, and public transportation projects. And those were each prioritized separately, which has worked really well because now we've been able to advance and really fund most of the number one state system project, which is I-84 in Canyon County, is funded. I think right now it's funded completely and it's getting to be built, completed. Same thing with the local system projects. So it's easier to then kind of find the projects that need to get funded when they are kind of more clearly identified like that. In this next plan, we need to also include those bike and ped projects in there, especially regional pathways as fundable projects or identified as need. And if they're not funded, then keep putting them in there. And we also have then a more shorter term system kind of within Compass where we have this annual resource development plan that includes all the unfunded needs, and so that we can keep finding funding sources for them.
All right. Well, I have some more questions if the audience doesn't quite yet. So I guess in thinking about connecting with the HCRI and other groups, what do you think what are some needs that you have that we could potentially help facilitate or help with going forward? And then Jay, do you have a question after? Looks like you.
Yeah, I'll go afterwards. Just kind of an
Okay.
interesting question.
Okay, so one of the things that is actually now a federal required element of these long-range plans is to address resilience. And the way that it's written in the regulations, it kind of comes through with stormwater management. But then different regions have really, I mean, it really is about what your region needs, what those resilience issues are, whether it's wildfires or flooding or something else. And so that's one thing that I will need some help with. And really, how do we as a region, especially from a transportation point of view, address resilience in a meaningful way? So stay tuned.
Go ahead, Jay.
Actually, I have just a couple questions. First, I wanted to say that, I lived in the Washington, D.C. area for 11 years, so kind of a similar experience to you, Carson, with, access to light rail and the metro there and the MARC train. And so my I'd like to see, those types of things in the Treasure Valley. But one thing I'm wondering, with the pandemic, everybody's working from home. It kind of affects the commute patterns. And that was the great thing about riding the MARC train and in the DC area. It kind of helped with the commute. But if in 2050, more people, hopefully the pandemic's gone, but if more people are kind of telecommuting, so to speak, does that kind of change plans, how you would look at it through Compass?
Yeah, that's a really good point also, because obviously we've now experienced a lot of pretty significant changes and kind of wondering now which of these will stay. A lot of more people are now working remotely. Is that a trend that will continue? However, what nationally has been shown is that 40% of all jobs cannot be done from home. So there's still going to be a very significant portion of the people that need to get to work, wherever that is. And the other side of that is kind of an equity issue also, because a lot of people that are relying on public transportation, that is their only means of getting around. They cannot afford a car or for whatever reason cannot drive. And so that's the other side of it, that we do need to be able to provide, again, options for people to get around and get to places where they need to go, especially jobs. And so this is going to be something that I think everybody is going to be grappling with in the coming years. It's just what exactly, what do these changes really mean? are more people going to be working remotely? What does that do for, all this commercial office space that we have now available? Maybe in some cases you can convert some of those to affordable housing or some kind of other thing. I don't know. And then just what are people's transportation choices? A lot more people are now walking and biking than they ever did before. Again, we have, so go on the Compass website and browse around because we have traffic count data starting from early this year and comparing to last year's counts. So everything dropped significantly in March and April. And then come May, it starts to get back up. And in some segments of, like I-84, we're now in, more traffic than what we had a year ago. But at the same time, walking and biking has really increased significantly because we have some permanent counters throughout. And so we know now how those are being used. And so there is that trend also.
Thank you. I noticed that transportation or that traffic increase as well. Thank you for your presentation. Excellent and interesting.
T. Boothman, what's your first name? I recognize you, but I can't remember. You have a comment in here. Do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit more about what you said?
Yeah, my first name's Tony.
Thank you. Hi, Tony.
Yeah, there again, this is new to me. I've not been to the Compass website like she's recommended that we go to. So some of my questions may be answered there. I know we just completed our local comprehensive plan for our county this last year, and none of this was involved in that. And granted, we are 75 miles away from downtown Boise. However, 30% of our local population commute to and from Boise or the Treasure Valley on a daily basis. So it does have a major impact. And growth, I know Lisa, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, mentioned that that's one of the things that they're seeing is it would be nice if growth stopped, but we're seeing in the Payette County region, the outskirts of Canyon County, pretty massive growth going on right now. And we look at Emmett. Emmett's probably 4 times the population base that they were 20 years ago. And that greatly affects what they're planning on down there. And that's why previously I asked the question of, are the outlying areas being brought into this? Because it does throw a major impact on our small communities out here also. There again, I'm in Weiser. We're the most downstream point of the Snake River drainage. How is this going to affect our water qualities? How is it going to affect the water that comes in here? The Treasure Valley has not been known for major industrial growth due to the fact that we don't have a good enough water source. And we've all found out through, we can find this information through the Department of Water Resources that this area could support agricultural industry. However, the more people that move in, they utilize more of our precious water than does agriculture, because agricultural water is usually recycled water. Even though it's turned into a ditch, it usually gets reused on down the line multiple times. Whereas with sewer systems, storm drains, everything, that doesn't necessarily get reutilized. So, is that part of the planning process? I'm sorry, I talk way too much when I get on here, so please excuse me.
It went really good.
That's very important points. And that's one thing that we've are looking to, just can we, again, within Compass, how can we address some of these resources, like water availability, that at some point that is going to be a limiting factor throughout the valley, and how do we kind of get ahead of that and maybe, again, kind of manage things a little bit differently and better. But yeah, excellent points.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
I think
Just one thing, there's actually a talk, today's Thursday, right? Tomorrow, Friday, from the Idaho, sorry, I never can remember what their acronym stands for. Idaho Association of Water Resources Association, something around those words. But anyway, they have their annual meeting tomorrow, and they're talking about some of these challenges, Tony. So I'll put the link for that in the chat. So if anybody's interested in their annual meeting, some of this might come up then as well. Really great points. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. That was great. And thank you, Liisa, so much for your time. It was really interesting to hear about what our community thinks about what's going to be happening. So yeah, a round of applause for Liisa, a virtual round of applause. And be sure to join us next month on the 14th for the Idaho Food Bank, talking about what they've been working on. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you in a month, if not sooner.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
My hand.
Great. Thanks, Liisa. That was really great.
Yeah, that was great. Super interesting. Oh my God, and scary. A lot of people. Oh, well.
Okay, well, I will be sending you the
the chat.
PDF slides and
Great, thanks.
a couple of those links, webinars.
Great, thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
All right, well, have a
Thank
good
you.
rest of your day.
Thanks, you
Alrighty.
too.